Hi. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Alright. Sweet.
Alright, so it's 18 hours of instruction, and it's on Saturday and Wednesday. And so it's alternate. Because one Saturday and then 2 Wednesdays and then 1 Saturday.
No, you're good.
And the Saturday courses are at 9 o'clock in the morning until 1:15. I think those are actually limited. And then the Wednesday is from 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 5:35. Webcast. Got it. Okay.
Actually, it does, because the Thursday, there are two. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There are two different classes. They're called Wednesday, Saturday, and Thursday, Saturday.
Right.
So the courses are 3 hours. They're from 4 until 10 o'clock. And so there are 6
Oh, good.
there are 3 hours each. So that is
Oh, great.
18 hours. But that's the
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
It's just Princeton.com. So there's a section that goes find a course and you'll type it in. And so the one
Yeah.
in Milton High School that starts on September 28th,
Okay.
there are 2 different options, meaning 2 different courses. One of those courses is on
Got it.
Wednesdays, and the instruction is on Wednesdays, and then
Okay.
Saturday is the practice test, and then the other one is So
Yep.
the
Okay.
classes, for example, with the Wednesday courses, every Wednesday,
Okay.
So the Wednesday courses are from 4 o'clock until 7, and there are 6 Wednesday courses.
Perfect.
Yeah, and or there's the Thursday course option as well.
Beautiful.
Actually, 3.
Gorgeous.
Right.
No, I don't think so. I think we're good to go.
Thursday. Thursday is
Okay, great. Oh, I guess I do have a question. So it says on mine, right, testing audience stream, a slight delay is normal. There's a link that says go back to my webcam. Okay. Right. So you can't see it. Okay. I might do that.
Alright, and I'll just send you the link, okay?
Okay.
Alright, thank you.
Thanks. But I think that's it. Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye. Okay. Hi.
How's it going?
This is going to be really weird. I've never given an online presentation before.
Oh, so you're doing it now.
Yeah. Starts at 6.
The Princeton Review, this is Bridget. Practice test? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We have an office, like our general office is in Midtown Atlanta, right by Georgia Tech. And then we also have an classroom location.
Sharonda, do we have validation for that desk?
Mm-hmm.
Can I have one for when I'm done with this
How
presentation?
long do you need?
Presentation was from 6 to 7, and I got here at 5:30, so.
Yeah, where do you live?
You're welcome.
Okay, yeah, from time to time, which steps are you interested in doing? Okay. Yeah. Let's see. So, see your location. We have, so on our website, you can visit PrincetonReview.com. On the front page, it has a section that says attend a free event in your area. So at any time, whenever you decide which task you're interested in, you can just click on that task and then enter your zip code. And so that way you can see if there's an upcoming practice test in your area. We also have free practice tests online that you can take from anywhere. And for that, you just go to the top. It says home, college, graduate student law. So you just click on the test and site that you're interested in, and then there's a section on the pull down that says free practice test, and then you just click on that, so you can take that at home. They're structured just like a real form, so it just depends on which test you're running. You know what? For the in-class, like if they're actually if you're taking them on the location, it can take a little while for the spores to come back because they have to grow in here. For the pre-cancer test, I believe you get your score. Can you hold on for 1 second? Do you know on the free online practice test how quickly the scores come?
Ooh.
Hey, Sharonda.
Sharonda?
How quickly, if you're taking a free practice
So this
test
starts
online,
at 6.
Yes. Does it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
how quickly?
So I'm already connected and everything, which is
If
good.
they take a practice
I had to
test
make new
online,
slides
they get
because
their
there was no way to
scores back
download the
instantly.
slides from last year.
Essays.
Yeah, so I had to make like all new slides, which was fine.
Sorry.
Oh, that's cool. I just made them this morning, but
I'm glad you checked that this morning.
yeah. So there's no way for me to download those, so I made new slides. But the issue is that once 6 o'clock hits and I hit this, anything that's said in here can be heard in there. There's no microphone. It goes straight through my laptop.
Okay, you want to go to my office then? The door closed?
I can't disconnect now.
Oh, you can't log
It has
off and log back
to,
on?
no, it has to be Ethernet, and they only give me the login once, so once I have the login, I can't
Oh, okay.
log out and go
Just
back.
tell Bridget to be quiet.
Read all about the test itself, and then the test is, and then our practice tests are structured just like the real test.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we sure do. You know what? We kind of have a wide range. So basically, we have different types of tutoring. Some of them are about 3 hours, and then you can go from there, or you can tutor in the
I'm in now, locked and loaded. So.
Host an online college fair.
Or you can do our online.
And she's representing TPR.
Ooh, party.
How many people were they playing? Was playing on? I forgot.
I don't remember what she said. But it gets recorded, so even after the session is over, it's on demand for the next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that means I can show it to anybody?
Right, so they'll send me a link, and it'll be the link to the presentation, like the whole thing.
Welcome.
Make sure you send us that link.
Yeah. Because I still have the one from the guy who did it from California last year. That was how I was going to get his slides, because they sent me the link. So I think it's on here. It must be more than a year, because I have his. So.
Oh, that's even better. Let's finish up our discussion. Well, you might want to bring your laptop in my office because we can't disturb you.
Sorry.
Okay, I was saying that I'm probably going to have to rent a car, but I can get something bigger or a truck and then take some of the stuff over to the hills.
Okay. Another question. Is it trick on my hand or is there anything you need from me?
Look at how cute. Hi.
Blue order for Tuesday.
Okay.
Turn it.
You gave me the address right to the delivery and the invite.
For the invite. Yeah, put it in the invite.
Yeah. Yeah.
50. Okay.
All right, you get on your phone and then just go with that.
I love that they can only see me from the neck up. It's amazing. You can wear my scrub pants. All right. Hi, everybody. Good evening or good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. Greetings from the Princeton Review office in Atlanta. My name is Erica Lupi, as you can see on the slide, and I'm presenting SAT and ACT strategies for success. Hopefully today you'll get a little bit more information on the differences between the tests, which one might be right for you, and a few of our strategies to hopefully help you do better when you actually take them. A little background on me. I have been a teacher for SAT and ACT here in Atlanta for the past 2 years, and I love the job. It's absolutely amazing, and the students are so great. You guys are so determined to do well, and hopefully we can help you do that here today. If you have any questions afterwards, my email is on the slide, eloup09@gmail.com. If you're looking for enrolling in one of our programs or just had some questions about the presentation, I can definitely help you out with that or direct you to someone who can help you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the SAT today. So we're going to go over some basics. It might be a little bit redundant. It might be some information you already know, but the basics are important. As with anything, you definitely need to know how the test works, how it's structured in order to do well. So, the SAT is 3 hours and 45 minutes long. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This test really requires endurance. It's very difficult to sit still for that long, especially for high school students who are used to being up and running around. So we definitely need to keep that in mind. The SAT has 10 sections comprising 3 subjects, math, critical reading, and writing. And they're scored 200 to 800 points per subject. So a perfect score on this new SAT that you parents may not have taken is a 2400 as opposed to a 1600 like it was in the past. The essay is factored into the writing score. We'll talk about that a little more later as well. But the essay gets its own score too, from 0 to 12. The ACT is similar in time. They can claim that they're a shorter test, but only by 10 minutes. So don't let that be a factor in deciding between the two. It's still endurance-based. It's a long test, so get ready for it. The ACT, though, only has 5 sections instead of 10, and there's 1 for each subject: English, math, reading, science, and writing, where the writing here is only the essay. They're scored 1 to 36 per section, and the essay score here is also between a 0 and 12. The composite score is the average of all of your sections except for writing. Now this is different from the SAT, right? So the SAT adds your sections together to get your total score that they're going to send to the school. The ACT is going to average it instead. So this can be better for you if you just struggle in one section because the other sections can bring up your score. It's great. A note about the 2 tests, depending on your region, right? So West Coast and Northern East Coast, you guys tend to take the SAT a little more. It's more popular around there. While the Midwest and the South, down here in Atlanta, the ACT is gaining ground. Every school will take both tests, so don't worry about it. Your score matters, not the test type. So if you're a girl, you might tend to do better at the ACT. If you're a boy, you might tend to do better at the SAT. It just depends on your own personal preference and your own personal test-taking abilities. So don't get nervous about a school only taking one or the other. And if you're concerned, you can always contact your admissions rep for the school that you're interested in, and they'll clarify it for you. So a little more about the SAT and what's on it. So as we talked about before, there are 3 subjects on the SAT: reading, math, and writing, all with a score out of 800. The reading section is comprised of sentence completions, which are pretty much vocabulary based. Parents who have taken the SAT, you may remember this being similar to the analogy section. That doesn't exist anymore, which is great for our students. The analogy section was always a tough one. So that's gone, but sentence completions are here instead. So you definitely need to know your vocabulary to do well on these. Reading also includes what we typically think of as reading, the reading comprehension based on the passages. There are short and long passages as well as pairs of passages that you have to work with, so be aware of that. Math on the SAT is only those 4 types: Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, and Arithmetic. So if you haven't taken Trig yet, don't worry, it's not going to be on there. And with the Algebra 2, there's only 3 or 4 questions on the test based on that. So if you struggle with Algebra 2, but you're feeling pretty confident in everything else, you can still get a good score on math. Now, the writing is also out of 800, but they factor in your essay. So they have a scale to convert your 0 to 12 score into 30% of whatever that score out of 800 is that you're getting. Everything else is going to come from multiple choice grammar questions. That makes up 70% of your test. So make sure you're studying grammar before you take the test, and also please try to do well on the essay because that 30% can make a big difference. So now to break down the ACT, since there are 5 sections, it's a little bit different. So math on the ACT is arithmetic, algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry, just like the SAT. But it also includes some trig. However, like with the algebra 2 on the SAT, there's only 3 to 4 trig questions. So if you're concerned about it, if trigonometry isn't really your thing, you can still do well. Don't panic. With reading on the ACT, you have long reading passages. That's pretty much it. You're going to get some prose fiction, probably history, a natural science, things like that, but it's all long reading. With English, it's going to be multiple choice grammar. That's it. Mostly like an editing or a proofreading test. So you need to definitely be aware of those comma rules, all those typical grammar rules in the English language. Science is based on charts and experiments, and what's really interesting that is I guess a common misunderstanding about the science section is that you don't need that much outside knowledge to do it. There's no science content testing on the science section. It's really just another reading section. You need to be able to identify the trends and the relationships in the graphs that they are giving you. But you don't need to know about the Krebs cycle or the parts of a cell. It will never test you on that. It's only about your ability to comprehend the graphs and charts that it's giving you. So that's great. You don't need to cram your science textbook the night before. Just be able to comprehend what they're giving you. The 5th section on the ACT is writing, but it's only the essay. So there are no additional multiple choice questions with this. You just need to write the essay. So what's a good score? Now, the average score on the SAT for 11th graders is about a 1500, so that's going to be 500 per section, while the average score on the ACT for 11th graders is about a 21 out of 36. So keep that in mind, but also your test score really depends on what schools you're looking at. Your test scores are going to factor in much more in your application to a big state school as opposed to a smaller liberal arts school that has fewer applicants and more time to really get to know you personally in your application. They get to know about your community service and what you like to do in your free time. While a big state school has so many applications that they don't have time to really dig down deep in each of those. So your test score is obviously going to be much more important to those big state schools. Also, these test scores are really important in your admissions applications because they're your first impression. You know, especially when these admissions offices are getting so many applications, and they're having to go through them so quickly to process them, that's going to be the first thing they look at, as well as your GPA from high school. So really be aware that this can make or break your application. A good score, though, is one that gets you into your top choice school. So it just depends on where you're trying to go. Don't let anyone else influence you by telling you, oh, that's not a good score. It might be good for where you're trying to go. So really check those admissions offices, check with their websites, know what you're shooting for. Also, different colleges, like we said, do have different score expectations for admissions as well as their financial aid. So if you're looking to get some scholarships directly from the college or even from some outside sources, Your test scores may factor into that. You can call ahead of time before you take the test so that you're aware of what you're looking for with those. Identify the colleges you want first, and then research your scores. You always want to shoot for, what you're usually told, a safety and a reach and a comfortable school. But honestly, just pick where you fit the best, and then figure out where your test score fits in. So what do the tests actually measure? Only how well you take the test. I know that it seems like these tests are the end-all be-all of your academic career once you are finishing high school, but that's not the case. People who tend to do very well in high school may do really poorly on the test. Don't freak out. It's okay, and don't take your scores personally. Some people don't do well on standardized tests, while other people excel at them no matter what. So it only tests how well you take the test. It's not an intelligence test. It's not going to tell you your IQ. Anybody with the proper coaching can learn how to increase his or her scores. Anybody. No questions asked, no exceptions. But knowing that, why do we have students that struggle on the SAT and the ACT so frequently? The reason for this is because the tests are different from what you're used to. They have to be approached differently. It's not the same as being able to cram for a biology test the night before, right? You don't know what's going to be on it the next day, and it's really more about the strategies of how you take the tests and the techniques as opposed to the content that you know ahead of time. So you can't cram. And the tests are also very long. You're not going to have a 4-hour high school test. You're not going to have the opportunity to do something like that unless you're taking an AP or something similar, AP or IB. But knowing that, we don't have the endurance to sit there for that long and really focus. So that's definitely why some of us struggle. In addition to this, especially for the SAT, the questions are written in a very tricky way, and they're meant to be tricky. The answer choices are filled with common traps because all the questions are multiple choice, right, for the most part. And so if your questions are multiple choice, they're already giving you the answer. It's in front of you, and you just have to pick it out of the list. So they feel like this is a little easy, right? So to make it a little more difficult, they're adding in these trick questions and these trap answers. So be aware of that. Another issue that comes up is that a lot of the grammar rules you learn when you're in middle school, right? Elementary school, middle school. And when you get to high school, it focuses more on literature and understanding the language, right? So when they go back to testing these grammar rules, we're definitely going to struggle a little bit. They're things that we may not necessarily see. And especially with the immersion in technology that we're seeing with texting, IMing, Facebook, Twitter, all of these things, they don't really promote great grammar. So we definitely have to focus on that when we start studying for the tests. On that same note, a lot of the math tested is content that students have learned a long time ago. You learned arithmetic in elementary school and middle school, and probably the same with algebra and geometry. You may not have seen it for a few years. So especially high-scoring math students in their math classes in high school, they might struggle with this basic math because they haven't had to do it for a while. Now, when we get to the essays are always a point of contention with students who feel that they're great writers a lot of the time, most of the time, but then they get to the test and their essay scores don't come out to what they're looking for. The reason for this a lot of the time is because when you write an essay in school, you're not timed, right? So you're trying to write this essay in this short amount of time. It's less than an hour. You have to gather your thoughts, plan what you're going to say, make sure you get everything in. And that's very, very different from what you're doing in high school. So we're going to do a little experiment here for a second. We like to call the average student Average Joe. So we're going to see if you're an Average Joe. I know that when I did this, I was. So you have 3 seconds to pick a number. Don't tell me what it is, and don't tell me in the questions. Just pick a number. 1, 2, 3. All right. Hope you have your number. You can shout it from the rooftops if you want. You're the only one in your space since we're in cyber world. Alright, so you could have picked any number, right? You could have gone up to 55,000, you could have gone to 2,300, 2,400, 5, 10, 15. But chances are you picked a number between 1 and 10. Am I right? Because I know I do. I do that when someone tells me to pick a number. We're predictable. We're predictable human beings. We're all raised in a semi-similar environment with semi-similar curriculum, especially if we're raised in the public schools. So we're predictable, and the test writers know that. So they know which wrong answer choices will be appealing to us, and they like to put those as the trap answers. So really be aware of that. I'm getting a lot of questions, and I just want to let you guys know I see them, and I'm definitely going to get to those. We're going to do all the questions at the end, so stay tuned. I'm just going to try to get through this material first, and I'll definitely answer all your questions at the end. We'll have plenty of time, promise. All right. So a little more about the differences. The SAT is very vocabulary-based, as we talked about before. Something that is really helpful for this, that a lot of people don't get access to, but is really great to do, is Latin roots. If you have access to learning that, Latin roots can be very, very helpful, since obviously English is a Latin Romance language. So that can be helpful for you. Also, the main difference we talked about before as well, the ACT is a science section, but remember that's only reading. You've done it before, you'll be okay. Now this is something that comes up a little bit in our classes, and we'd really like to clarify this. So the SAT essay is required, and you know that going in. You have to write the essay when you're in there, no matter what. The ACT, however, will tell you that the essay is optional. So you can do all the other sections, right, first, and then leave and not do the essay. You do have that option. However, we highly recommend that you don't do that. Please always write the essay for the ACT. And the reason for this is because you have already been there for over 3 hours, right? And how are you going to feel when you go to apply to your dream school and they tell you, hey, we need your essay. Where is it? And you didn't write it because it was optional. Not optional. Always write this essay. Very important. If you know that the school you're applying to is not going to look at your essay and you're taking the ACT, that's fine. You can decide to exempt it if you want, but check first. Very important. This is another interesting difference between the tests. The SAT essay is always philosophical in nature. And what we mean by that is it'll ask you, is the majority always right? Something along those lines that really prompts you to think in a deeper way. The ACT essay is not going to be that way. It's going to be very teen-friendly. How do you feel about sponsorships in high school athletics? Or what do you think about uniforms being mandatory in schools? So if you know that you're not necessarily a deep thinker in that short amount of time, the ACT essay may actually help you. We talked about the SAT being tricky before. The SAT is definitely the trickier test of the two, but it does test easier concepts, right? There's no trig on it. They really just want to try to make sure you are understanding the questions and you can reason through the way they're asking it to you. The ACT is much more straightforward in the way that it's writing the questions, so it will probably be a little bit easier to understand, but on the flip side of that, it tests some harder concepts. The science reasoning may be a little bit tough for you. The math includes the trig, so when you're deciding, that may factor in for you. We talked about the gender thing for a brief second earlier, that boys do succeed at the SAT a little more often, and girls tend to succeed at the ACT a little more often. There are always exceptions, right? And the reason for that sometimes is that girls tend to be a little better at reading comprehension, and the science test on ACT is reading comprehension, right, like we talked about before. So sometimes that can happen. There are a lot of reasons for this. It can have to do with how well you focus, the gender differences in that. It's just worth it maybe to try out both, for you. Another point between them, the SAT is very technique-based, and the reason for that is because the material is a little bit easier. Not easy, but easier. And so with that, you definitely need to focus more on how you're reading the questions, how you're understanding them, and the methods that you're using to solve these questions. The ACT, like we said, content-based. So you definitely need to know your stuff. You need to know your math formulas, area of a circle, perimeter of a circle, things like that. You do need to know those and have those memorized to take the ACT. The SAT will provide you with them. So specifically, how are the tests scored? Sometimes this can be very important, and I'm about to tell you why. So with the SAT, pretty intuitive. You get a question right, you get a point. Straightforward. If you leave it blank, you don't lose any points, but you don't get any either. If you get it wrong, right, you're going to lose a quarter of a point. So this really changes the game. One of my coworkers who gave a similar presentation last year used a basketball analogy that I really liked. And so he said, you know, if you're playing the game, right, you're dribbling down the court, you're taking shots. When you take a shot in basketball and you miss, well, you missed an opportunity to gain some points, but you're not going to lose any, right? You still have just as many as before you took that shot. The SAT is a game changer because imagine how a basketball game would be now if you lost a quarter of a point every time you took a shot. Kobe'd be in some trouble, right? We know this. So keep that in mind when you're taking the test. It is a huge difference. So what this means for you while you're taking it, do not guess randomly. Don't do it. I'm telling you right now, don't do it. Bad idea. If you can eliminate an answer or two, sure, right? Your chances of getting that right just went up pretty significantly. But if you have no idea, leave it blank, right? You don't want to take that shot and lose your point. It's better to play it safe and keep what you got. The ACT, though, is like the real basketball game, which we love. So you get a point when you get it right and sink the shot. If you don't take the shot, you don't get points, but you don't lose any. And amazingly, like real basketball, if you get it wrong, right, bounces off the rim, hits the backboard, flies off, it's alright. You don't lose any points. So take as many shots as you want. Take all the shots you can, okay? This means guess. Never, ever leave a question blank on the ACT. Very important. Never leave it blank, right? If there are 5 answer choices, you still have a 20% chance of getting it right even if you have no idea. And if you're not going to lose any points for guessing, it's so worth it. We do a strategy called Letter of the Day. And what's really cool about that is you choose before the test starts what letter you want to bubble in. So if you get to a question and you're running out of time, but you don't want to leave it blank, you just bubble in your letter of the day that you already selected. You don't even have to think about it. You don't waste any time, and you move on to the next. So, summary of our strategy. For the SAT, if you can eliminate 1 or 2 answers, go ahead and guess. But if not, leave it blank. With the ACT, take all your shots. Be a Kobe. Shoot as many times as you can. So we're moving into the strategy section now. We've gone over most of the differences, I think, hammered them in a little bit. So we're going to move into some of our strategies, the Princeton Review ones. And I personally really believe in these. I didn't have any prep when I took the tests back in the day. And now, looking back, I can't believe that I didn't. I can't imagine taking these tests without this now. They're so helpful, especially for students who are in the mid-level range. But I've seen high-scoring students improve after learning this, right? We're all about giving you more methods to solve the questions. We don't care how you get it right as long as you get it right. So we just want to give you some options. So our pacing strategy, right? Imagine you're driving your car down the freeway, listening to the radio, and all of a sudden you hear a crash, right? Way up ahead of you, you can see that there's a crash right in the middle of the freeway. What do? Right? You want to slow down and not smack that, not hit that car crash right in the middle. You want to slow down and be cautious, really take your time getting there so that you're safe on arrival, right? So we kind of think of that in the same way here with which tests or which questions you want to answer. So the first questions, especially for most of it on the SAT, the first question is going to be the easiest question out of the whole section, right? And then the further you move down that section, right, you're getting towards question 20, they're going to get harder. There are easy, medium, and difficult questions, and they move in kind of a gradient on their way through the section. This doesn't account for reading, or it doesn't apply to reading, so do keep that in mind. Reading is its own beast, so this doesn't really work for that. But for these, all the questions are worth the same points. This is especially important in math, right? So you don't want to rush through and speed to try to get all those questions done and then make a silly mistake on the easy questions at the beginning. They're all worth the same amount of points. 1 point. 1 point each. So really take your time and get those low-hanging fruit at the beginning of the section, right? There's no reason to rush and get through all of them. If you're scoring above a 650 on the SAT, or, you know, above a 33 or a 34 on the ACT, this may not apply to you, right? If you're shooting for a perfect score and you're already close, then it's worth it for you to attempt all the questions. You have to, or you're not going to have enough raw points to get that perfect score you're looking for. But for the rest of us who are 650 and under, pace. Take your time. Don't make those silly mistakes at the beginning where, you know, you go back and look at the answers on the practice test and you're like, oh, I can't believe I missed that. I knew that answer. So that's a missed opportunity, right? It's a missed shot. So really take your time and pace. Most students, since most of us are not scoring in that elite range, should slow down instead of speed up. So don't be afraid to take your time sometimes. That's okay. Our second strategy is called plugging in, and this is one of our cornerstones of our program with the math sections, and this applies to both SAT and ACT. So let's suspend reality for a little bit, all right? And imagine we're at the candy store, okay? I personally really like Tootsie Rolls. I love Tootsie Rolls and Tootsie Pops and all that. So imagine that you're going into the candy store. You got $1, okay? So about $1. And the Tootsie Pops are 10 cents a piece, okay? So if I decide to buy 3 Tootsie Pops at 10 cents a piece, and I have $1, I give them $1, how much change do I get back? Okay, so you should have thought 70 cents, right? I bought 3 Tootsie Pops at 10 cents a piece, that's 30 cents, and I gave them $1, so I should have gotten 70 cents back. Piece of cake, right? You guys have that, you know it, you can do it. Nothing new. Well, unfortunately, you go back to the candy store the next day, right? And all the sticker prices are different. And you go up to the register and you're expecting for him to say, hey, how many Tootsie Pops are you buying? 5? Okay, give me 50 cents. And instead, he says, oh, well, today the Tootsie Pops are X cents a piece, and you have Y dollars. What's your change? Right? And the letters don't really make sense. They don't compute as well, and that's why we plug in. So, which would you rather think about, right? Would you rather think about the Tootsie Pops in terms of X cents, or would you think about it in terms of 10 cents, right? We're obviously going to prefer the 10. So what we like to do is anytime you see an algebra equation, or you feel like you need to write an algebra equation on a math test, or on a question on the math section, pick your own numbers. Pick some easy numbers, a 2, a 3, a 5, a 10. Plug those in for your variables and solve. Solve it like that. Solve your answer choices and match up the 2. Alright? No matter how good you are at algebra, this is another option for you in case somewhere along the line your equation got mixed up, or you missed a decimal in your equation, or you flipped it around. I mean, I'm an engineer. I go to Georgia Tech, and I know I still do that. I'm about to graduate as an engineer, and sometimes I get my equations mixed up when I'm writing them. So I can imagine when you're hurried and rushed trying to write them on the real test that you're going to do the same, right? So we just plug in our numbers, smooths it right out. Plugging in your own simple small numbers is a much better and faster method to solve these math problems. So let's move on to reading. So the typical tester during the reading section, and you students might know this, and this may even jog your memory, parents. You turn the page, and you see that it's about to be a reading section, and you just groan. You put your head down, and you can't believe that you're going to have to read all of this for the next 45 minutes or 75 minutes or whatever. You want to be done already, and you haven't even started, right? Reading can be boring, and a lot of times the essays are not about things you're interested in. They're not about the Steelers. They're not about, World of Warcraft. They're not about things that you care about a lot of the time. Sometimes they can be, right? And in that case, you should probably do that one first because you care, but that's not usually the case. So we have kind of a strategy for you to figure out how to do the reading section yourself. Number one is to identify your reading style. You know you the best. I cannot tell you if you're a fast reader or a slow reader or if you're an A+ level or a D- level. You know that yourself. And especially students who are juniors and seniors, even sophomores, you've had over a decade to figure out what kind of reader you are, so you know. So identify your reading style and then adjust appropriately. Learn to rephrase the question. This is really important. So a lot of times a question will say, the author mentions flock of seagulls in line 12 of this paragraph in order to blank, right? And so that's not even really a question. It is a question because it doesn't finish the sentence, but it's really a statement that they're asking you to finish. So sometimes these questions can be a little bit confusing or a little bit misleading. So the first thing you want to do when you read the question is make sure you truly understand it and that you can rephrase it in your own language. So for the flock of seagulls question, right, you could rephrase it as, why does the author mention the flock of seagulls? Those are really good words that you want to be able to use, right? Why? Why was something done? How? How does the author portray such and such? What? What happened in the second paragraph? Right? Really be able to rephrase those questions and understand them. Number 3, active reading when searching for the answer. Active reading can be so helpful on this test, especially when you're trying to save time. So what we mean by active reading is holding your pen, right? Grabbing your pen, and when you're reading, making notes, underlining, write all over the thing. Your test should not be blank when you finish it. You should have writing everywhere. And the reason for that is it helps you to understand your own thought process, right? So if you underline something that's important and you go back later and you're trying to remember, oh, what was I looking for? You underlined it. It's there. You don't have to think for another 30 seconds and waste that time. You know. So active reading can be really helpful, especially writing the notes to explain it to yourself a little bit. And kind of along that same line, we like to map the passage. So what that means is that when you're answering question 3, right, and you've circled it, or you've underlined it, or done something, you've marked that space where you found the answer to question 3, chances are when you get to question 4, the answer is going to be really close to where you marked the answer for question 3. Now, some of the testing is chronological for reading. Not all, but some of it is chronological. And so knowing that if you can map the passage as you go through, then it's going to save you a lot of time. You don't have to read the whole passage over and over trying to find this one answer when it's smack dab underneath the other one. And then the cornerstone of any multiple choice test, not just the SAT, not just the ACT, this can apply to your testing in high school, your testing in college, when you get to be an old person like me and you're getting ready to take the MCAT. Eliminating incorrect answers as you do a multiple choice test is crucial. If you know an answer is wrong, go ahead and cross it out. I know this seems like common sense, but a lot of people don't do this, and it confuses them later along the line. So if you know right off the bat that B is wrong, cross it out. Strike through the letter, cross through the answer choice, whatever helps you to remember, I don't even need to look at this anymore, right? And that way we can skim over it visually, right, when we're looking at the answer choices and not waste time having to read it again and again and remember, oh yeah, this was the one that was wrong. Get rid of it. Don't waste your time. So those are definitely some great strategies for reading that we can work with. The essays are, like I said before, always a little bit of a point of contention. You can be a great writer and not be a great fast writer. Right? So some crucial elements for this. The length of your essay is important. It is important. They give you 2 full-lined pages. You should be filling at least one of them. At least one of those lined pages should be full. All right? No less. At least one. Full page. If you go over, great. That's phenomenal. Right? As long as you're not rambling on about something that's off on a tangent, that doesn't have to do with the thing. If you can make it relate to the prompt in a very direct way and you can fill 2 full pages, more power to you. You're awesome. But at least do one. Also, neatness does count. And by neatness, we're not just referring to handwriting, though that's important as well, right? If it's illegible, they can't score it. But if you have little marks here and there, little carrots trying to insert words into sentences when there's really not enough space, this is not going to scan well. Your essays get scanned into the computer and sent to a live grader who then grades it online. Well, the problem with that is I'm sure most of you have seen what happens when you scan something where there are little marks all over the place, where the writing isn't especially clear, where the letters are really small. It gets illegible. Even if it was legible written, handwritten, once it gets scanned, sometimes you can't read it anymore. All right? So neatness really counts. Make sure everything is spaced out accordingly, that your handwriting is big enough to be seen and to be read. It really counts. If a grader has to struggle to read your essay, chances are you're going to be penalized for it, even though they're technically not supposed to, right? They're technically not supposed to take off for that. But if they can't read your essay and they struggle, it's going to make them frustrated. And I'm sure you know, frustrated teachers don't tend to give out a lot of A's, okay? So neatness really counts. In with that, organize your essay. Have clear paragraphs. Have indents for the beginning of your paragraphs. Don't skip lines in the lined paper just because you might run out of room. And also, it makes it look like more writing than you've actually done, and they know that. But in terms of organizing, have a clear intro, a clear conclusion, clear body paragraphs. Make sure they know what you're doing. They need to know that you had organized this essay as you had written it, okay? With that, make sure you're answering the question that they're asking. Understand the prompt. It's okay to take 2 or 3 minutes to kind of plan, think about the question. You don't want to take too much time because there's not a whole lot of time to write. But if you need those 3 minutes to really think about the prompt, especially on the SAT, where things are a little bit more philosophical, that's okay. In addition to that, if you are referencing a movie, okay, be very careful that you aren't summarizing the movie and having that summary take up your entire essay and then not even making the point to relate it back to the prompt. That sounds crazy, but that happens a lot, right? Especially for people who write about books they were really passionate about. If you're really passionate about Brave New World and all the futuristic things, it's easy to get caught up in those details and then not make the point about the majority being right or wrong or whatever the prompt was. So don't get caught up in the details. You can do a short summary. That's great. You should assume that the grader probably doesn't know the book that you're talking about, and do a very short summary for them just so they can kind of remember. It's probably been a while since they were in high school. But answer the question directly. Don't ramble. I know. I'm a rambler. I'm sure you guys can tell. So I've done it. Don't ramble. And the last point that I'll make, finally, is you always want to make sure you write a conclusion. No matter what, write a conclusion. So this means if they call 5 minutes and you're halfway through your second example body paragraph, doesn't matter. Write a conclusion. Stop right in the middle of it, go to your conclusion, write it. If you have time, you can always go back and finish your body paragraph. But that conclusion is really important. And it's important so that they know, right, what you were trying to talk about in your entire essay. It's really that last impression that they get of you. And they don't want that last impression to just be the end of your example paragraph, right? Because it doesn't really remind them about that great point you made in the first example paragraph, or about what your thesis even was at the end of your intro. Okay, so always make sure you're writing that conclusion at the end, even if you have to skip some other things to do it. Very important. Alright, so we've gone over the strategy sections that we were going to go over. We've done that. And we talked about the differences between the tests. So just a few reminders here at the end before we get to the questions. And there's a lot of them. I see them. Don't worry, I'm getting there. But a few things. If you are still a little confused or you're not really sure maybe which test type is best for you, or you want a definitive way to find out, we do a free practice test for that, which is amazing. Everyone likes free, right? And so we call that our PRA, our Princeton Review Assessment. And what that means is that we have a free practice test that is partially SAT sections and partially ACT sections. So you can take it and we'll score it for you and then tell you which test type you're better at. Okay? It's amazing. So definitely look up on our website, princetonreview.com, and I have it here at the bottom of the slides, all the slides, as well as our contact slide at the end, the question 1. But you can go online, put in your zip code, and it will pop up all of our marketing events for you and all of our PRA options. So that may be beneficial for you if you're still a little confused or if you're not sure if you want to take both. This may be helpful for you. Also, if you need test prep, we have the program for you. We have so many programs here, lots of different ones. I know I've taught a billion different ones here, from 18 hours to an ultimate course to some 3-hour tutoring. Whatever you want to do, we've got it. We can help you figure it out. All right? Just call the office, ask us. If we don't have what you want, no harm, no foul, right? But we're really here to help. I know that's how I got into this teaching business. I'm not going to school to be a teacher, but I loved taking the test. I like filling in the little bubbles. A little nerdy, I know. But I love doing that, and I want to be able to help our students do that. So let us know. We're here for you. And with that, I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but every student can improve with the right coaching and strategies. It's totally true. I promise. It may not be going from a 300 science or a 300 math section to an 800, but you can improve. You can get better than that 300. Maybe you can get to a 400. Maybe you can get to a 500 if you work really hard. Maybe you can get to a 600. It's really possible to improve. You will improve. All right, so every student can do that. Let us know. So I'm going to move into the questions. I see a lot of them, so I'm going to try to blow through them so I can get to as many as I can. On this slide, if you don't want to stick around for questions, I hope you do, but if you don't want to, our phone number is on here, 1-800-2-REVIEW, and I put the numbers there because I know my cell phone doesn't have the letters next to the numbers anymore. Also, our website is a great resource. Even if you're just looking maybe for some college information, we have that too. So princetonreview.com is amazing. And again, my name is Erica Lupi. I put my email there. You can email me any questions that you have that you think of later, or I can help you kind of get connected with whatever you're looking for with test prep. So looking at these questions that I've got here, let's see. First one, what is a good way to improve your vocabulary besides looking up words that you don't know? So I personally think the best way to improve your vocabulary in your reading section at the same time is to read more. I know that sounds pretty common sense, but really, start reading the newspaper, start reading a magazine. You can even read Sports Illustrated, read the articles, whatever you want to do. But the more you read, first of all, the faster you're going to be at it, and the more you're going to be able to comprehend it because you've had that practice. And also you're going to get exposure to those words in context, right? You'll be able to read a sentence and be like, oh, that's what that word must mean. Okay, so I would definitely advise doing something like that. Keeping a vocabulary journal of those words is great, so you can go back and review. Flashcards. Amazing. And like I said before, if you can get a book that kind of glosses over some of the Latin roots, amazing. All right, so definitely look for that. I hope that answered your question. Let's see what else we got. What ACT prep books would you highly recommend? So obviously I work for Princeton Review, so I'm going to recommend our books. But honestly, like I said, I didn't do any prep when I personally was in high school, and now looking at the books and kind of knowing how we teach, I do think we have the best materials out there. We sell them in Barnes & Noble. You can buy them online. I think you might be able to buy them from our website. I believe we do a book called Cracking the ACT. I'd recommend that. I don't know what other ACT books we do, actually, because I teach out of our manual, which is pretty much a Cracking the ACT book, so I would highly recommend that one. Oh, this is a good one. The question is, I feel good about all of my scores except for my reading scores on my ACT. Is the SAT much friendlier for slow readers? So it's definitely still going to be a challenge. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for you, but I will say that the ACT is written so that you will not finish, which is a problem, right? I believe, I may be mistaken off the top of my head, but I believe that there are 45 questions on the reading ACT and 35 minutes. Somewhere around that. I may be wrong off the top of my head, but I know that there are more questions than there are minutes. That's a problem, right? So definitely a problem. So the SAT might be friendlier for you in terms of time. Yeah, I would say that. Here's another one. For the science portion in the ACT, there's a lot of reading. So what is the best way to skim when reading? What type of information should one look for when skimming? So we actually recommend that you don't read any of the words, the little paragraphs above the charts and graphs, unless you get to a question and you realize the information isn't in the chart or graph. Don't waste time reading that at the beginning. Go straight to the charts, straight to the graphs, and you want to look for trends. So you want to see, are the curves on the graph all going up and to the right? Are the values and numbers in the tables increasing or decreasing? Are they staying constant? Look for those relationships first. Make little notes of them for yourself, and then try to answer the questions with just those relationships that you know, right? Know what the variables are on the charts and the graphs. Know the units. Just go with that information first. Don't read the paragraphs. And then if there's a question left that you couldn't answer, then you might need to read. But otherwise, I would skim that. Or not skim it. I would skip that. And leave it for the very end, only if it's absolutely necessary. For the reading section, is it smart to read the questions before you start the passage, or is it just a time waster? So for us, we highly recommend you read the questions first and look for, well, so it depends on the test, actually. I'll clarify a little bit more. For the ACT, yes. Read the questions first, look for the lead words that you're getting from each question, underline them in the question, make notes of it, and then just skim the passage really quickly looking for those lead words, right? So you can do that, and then when you get back to the questions, you'll know exactly where to look for your answer, okay? So you don't even have to thoroughly read the passage until you start doing the questions, okay? So you just skim first, look for your lead words, all right? For the SAT, it's chronological, which is great. So what that means is that you can just do question 1, go straight to the questions. Don't even skim the passage. Go straight to the questions, read question 1, find the answer for that, and then go to question 2. And the answer for that will be right underneath it, as long as it's not a general purpose question. So, tips. Hopefully that helped or answered your question about that. What is the best way to study? Take a class. Get a book. Honestly, right, I'm always going to advertise our products, but generally I really do feel that taking some kind of class, it doesn't have to be an ultimate. It can be, you know, a quick 12-hour class. It can be something similar to that. Can really help you. And if you either can't afford or you don't have time to take a class, or it's not offered in your area close enough to where you can drive to it, I would definitely recommend getting a book and just going through the book and following it. I know our Cracking the SAT book is amazing because I've gone through it. It's just like the manual that I teach out of. So I really highly recommend getting a book to study. Definitely. Yep. All right. Oh, question. Someone here goes to an IB school. Congratulations. My best friend did that, and I'm really jealous. I wish I had too. And they said that I have been learning to write in an AEA format, which is Assertion Evidence Analysis. So is that how I should write my essay, or is it supposed to be done in a different format? Short answer, do what you know. So if you're great at AEA and you can write it that way, and you have an intro and a conclusion, do it. That's a short answer. I gotcha. Let's see. So we talked about the test-taking strategy for science, right? Going straight to the charts and graphs and not worrying about the passages, things like that. So we've talked about that. The second part of your question was, how many times should you take the ACT and SAT to the point it doesn't look bad for colleges? So I would recommend taking it as many times as you want. Generally, that's 2. I would say 2 to 3 is probably pretty standard. You can do more if you want, or if you get your goal scores the first time you do it, then you're done. You're fine. Otherwise, 2 to 3 is pretty standard. You can contact the admissions office and see if they give you a specific answer. But usually I don't think colleges care, honestly, as long as you're showing improvement, right? So if you take it once and then you take it a second time and you still weren't quite where you wanted to be and you studied some more and you took it a third time and you still were getting better but you weren't quite where you wanted to be and you take it again, who cares? That's fine. I would also, with that, always report your scores just in case, because what happens if you take it and then you didn't elect to report your scores at the beginning, right, and then you forget to do it at the end? Well, now your college application doesn't have any test scores with it. That's a problem. I would recommend always reporting your scores, and don't worry about how many times you take it. Generally, you're only going to take it 2 or 3 anyway. You're going to run out of time, right? You're not in school forever. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay, so we talked about the practice test. Someone asked about the PRA. So I talked about that. Put your zip code in on our website, and it will send you to that. Someone asked, is vocabulary very important to score high on your critical reading section? Yes, it is very important, and that's where a lot of my students have struggled, is that they don't know the vocabulary. And, so when they're reading a question or they're reading parts of the passage, they don't understand it because they didn't understand that word. However, there's 3 times more reading comprehension questions than there are strictly vocabulary questions. So you can still score well with a moderate vocab knowledge, but I would recommend studying vocab for sure. It is important. For the SAT, very important. ACT is a little less, but... someone asked, my test is in the next 2 days. What should I do to study? Go to our website. See if there are any tips on there that can help you. Hopefully I helped you a little bit with some of these strategies. There's not a whole lot you can do 2 days before. If your SAT writing score is a bit low and you want to, as your question says, beef it up, I like that. If you want to do that, I would really make sure that you organize your essay because that's 30%. And maybe skim through an old grammar textbook. Maybe do an overview of that. But with 2 days to go, don't cram. not going to help you. You're pretty much already at the point where you're going to get what you're going to get. But, you know, if you're taking the SAT, maybe do some vocab flashcards. Maybe look in the back of our Cracking the SAT book at the hit parade words. You know, there's a lot of last-minute kind of quick things you can do, but not cram. I would not recommend it. You'll get burnt out. Let's see. Do you think it's worth it to study tons of SAT vocabulary lists a week before the test? Tons? No. So what we like to do is our hit parade. So in the back of, like I said, our Cracking the SAT book, we have a great list of words. We had people in the company who spent hours upon hours and days upon days going through old SATs and actually picking out the words that were in them the most often. And we call that our hit parade. So when you've heard me refer to that, that's what I'm talking about. And that's in our Cracking the SAT book. So what you can do is look at those, and it's split up by week. So you can study one list 1 week, perfect it, and work all the way through. I believe there are 8 weeks in it. I might be wrong on that. It might be a little more or a little less, but it's around 8. If you're only a week out, you don't want to cram. It's kind of the same answer that I gave to the person who's taking it in 2 days, right? You don't want to cram. You don't want to get burnt out. It is worth it to review vocabulary that you know is going to be there or vocabulary that you've studied in the past. Worth it. Yeah, definitely. You have a week, so you've got, you know, a few days you can space it out over. I would definitely do that. Alright, so I'm going to scroll through these one more time, make sure I didn't miss anything important. We've got about 3 minutes left, so if you have any last-minute questions, you can throw them in. Oh, I do see one about the ACT and SAT cost. I personally don't know that. I haven't taken it in a long time. It should be on their websites, though. So the ACT should be on ACT.org. It should tell you all the information about the test officially. And SAT, you want to go to collegeboard.com. COLLEGE, college, BOARD, board. All right, collegeboard.com for all of your SAT official questions, as in cost, when they're offering it, things like that. That's where I would go. We're working on it. We're still 3 minutes left, and yeah, that's all I got so far. So I guess I'll just start closing. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here. I hope I was helpful. If you have any questions, you have my email. It's right there on the screen. I can see it. I know it's there. So shoot me an email if there's a question that you forgot about, or if you want more information about our products, or things that I maybe didn't answer clearly enough, or questions about the books. If you email me, I can look up that information for you and get you a better answer. I don't know everything off the top of my head, but I can research for you. So just let me know. Shoot me emails. Let's see. You guys are welcome for all the thanks. Thanks for thanking me. Yeah, I'm definitely happy to be here. Quick question. I saw someone say, can't you take the ACT and SAT in community college? Some colleges may offer that. I don't know about them. I would check with the college directly. And then another question about sending schools. I send them. Short to the point. When you register, you should ask if you want to send your school. Send it. Later, even if this, you can take and benefit of the